Good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I am your host, Frank Acom. I'm so glad that you've joined us this morning on this beautiful and early Monday morning, the 2-hour broadcast of Frankly Speaking live from the Hesselson studio. We've got a lot to cover. Let's get to a couple of comments from viewers from over the weekend. First one. If you recall, last week we were talking about the article that suggested that Cuomo, it's not coming from Cuomo, the article was suggesting that Cuomo could face Governor Hochul in 2026. This person's 2 cents, Cuomo is no-mo Cuomo. Although I think Hochul is Cuomo on steroids, can you imagine him coming back with renewed power and an even greater ego? Yeah, remember his ego during the pandemic. But I'll continue. He will be even worse if that's possible and could make her look good. I maintain he was responsible for harming the most vulnerable people, and that's not to be rewarded or forgotten. I agree. That is the biggest, well, there's a lot of issues, obviously, the harassment, just his whole career as governor of New York. But the putting of patients, COVID patients, in a nursing home is unforgivable. And it's something that we can't forget. And it's something that we still demand answers so that nothing like that happens in the future. But I'll continue. Appreciate you, and again, extend my condolences on the passing of Dwayne Eddy. And you should enjoy knowing you made an impact on him and for him while he was with us. He must have sincerely appreciated you. Well, that means a lot to me. I would like to think so. I had such great conversations with him. I was thinking about it over the weekend. It's going to be tough not to be able to just call him or email him and see how everything is going and hear the amazing stories that make up really rock and roll history. And that gives me an opportunity to say, if you are in the Corning area, make sure you stop by and see our Dwayne Eddy painting. There it is. Now, of course, I have it facing me during the show, but I flip it around. So if you're on Market Street, you can see it, take a picture with it. It's amazing. And thank you to David Higgins for letting me have that in the window for a little bit. I really do appreciate it. Okay, next comment from a viewer. Speaking on the whole Trump situation, the political elite seem to hate leaders that the people love because it disrupts their decentralized tyranny. Trump exposes fault and chips away at the career politicians' power. And there's a lot to that with the, to use his term, the deep state. And that's why we're seeing the trials that we are seeing. It is going to be interesting how that all plays out. It seems to be helping him in the polls. We talked about this in the past. People may not like Trump, but they really don't like the swamp telling them who and who they cannot vote for, or this lawfare weaponizing the judicial system. Hey, as we move along, a couple updates. Mystic Dan, 18-1 long shot, winning the Kentucky Derby. Did anybody out there have it? You can comment at that number on the bottom of your screen, 607-358-3131. I would love to hear from you. Not a lot of people that I knew. I had a $2 win bet on it, but not a lot of people I know hit on Mystic Dan, kind of out of nowhere, but an 18-1. It was the race's closest three-horse finish since 1947. It was definitely an exciting finish, a photo finish. So if you had it, congratulations. I'd love to hear if you picked Mystic Dan. I don't think we even threw his name around when I talked to Shades from Tioga Downs on Friday. I don't even know if that name came up, if I'm being honest. Another update. Do you remember when I mentioned a Queens Deli that was raising money for the family of the slain Jonathan Diller, that NYPD hero who lost his life? Well, the deli has sold 2,217 chicken cutlet sandwiches, raising more than $15,000 in the process. Mario's Meat Market and Gourmet Deli in Middle Village gave $5 of each sale of the special, the NYPD hoagie, chicken cutlet, prosciutto, mozzarella, sun-dried tomatoes, and arugula, drizzled with balsamic glaze. Well, now I'm hungry. That sounds good. To widow Stephanie Diller and the couple's one-year-old son, Ryan. Owner Joe DeGangi said the 2,217 sandwiches sold generated $11,085 to give to Diller's family, but he collected an additional $4,100 in separate donations for a total of $15,185. Now, a separate GoFundMe page has raised more than $1 million. More than $2 million has been released for the Diller family overall, when including donations from Barstool Sports founder Dave Portnoy and others. All of us at Mario's would like to express our profound gratitude and appreciation for your help in raising money for Diller's wife and little boy. We thank you on their behalf and hope that the kindness you have demonstrated helps to restore your faith in humanity as much as it has ours. Queens Councilman Robert, pardon me, it's early. Queens Councilman Robert Holden said, "I'm proud to represent a community that supports our law enforcement and can come together to help the Diller family in these difficult times. Mario's Meats and my neighbors consistently step up when it counts." So I thought that was a nice update for that hero who lost his life just a few months ago. So, yes, we're covering a lot this morning. We're going to talk about college campus protests. It has trickled out outside of college campuses. We'll talk about that. We do have a couple New York State issues here as Albany is just about to end its session. We've got a few things that we're going to update on there as well. So weigh in. I see that some of Trump's potential running mates were on the news this weekend, kind of stumping for Trump. Who do you think it's going to be? I got to ask this. I was surprised when Marco Rubio's name was being thrown around. Were you? Or does that seem an obvious pick? What do you think about Marco Rubio as the potential VP for Trump? I didn't know he was a big Trump supporter. And I'm not knocking him. I know that when he originally was elected, the one issue I always had with Marco Rubio was he was supported by the Tea Party, if you recall. And then when he got elected, I don't want to say he disavowed the Tea Party, but kind of downplayed their support or their significance. And that always sat kind of uncomfortably with me. Oh, we got a couple waves coming in. I should be paying attention. So who, and I know I asked this last week too, who would you like to see in the VP slot? Some of the names being thrown around, Tim Scott, Rubio. I think Noem's name is still being thrown around, but I'm not sure where that's going to go. I know she was out over the weekend talking more about that, about the dog issue. We may talk about that as well if we get a chance. First, before we go to our first break, embattled ABC News president Kim Godwin has announced she's calling it quits as she faced heightened scrutiny from corporate superiors, over her job performance, and months after she was stripped of much of her power. She said in a staff memo, "I've decided to retire from broadcast journalism. Anyone who's passionate about what we do knows there's no business like it. So this was not an easy or quick decision. But after considerable reflection, I'm certain it's the right one for me as I look to the future and prioritize what's most important for me and my family." Godwin started her career in journalism 4 decades ago and reached her professional pinnacle when she was selected to run ABC News a little more than 3 years ago, becoming the first black woman to lead a national broadcast news operation. But her tenure was tumultuous, and she appeared to lose most of her sway when she was effectively demoted in February after Disney, which owns ABC News, underwent a restructuring. She insisted at the time she was still in charge following the reshuffling. Godwin's departure comes as Disney corporate overlords have been conducting a thorough review of her leadership. Deborah O'Connell, who was promoted to a leadership position that puts ABC News under her purview, was said to be shocked by Godwin's mismanagement of the money-making division that includes Good Morning America and World News Tonight. In her memo to staff on Sunday, Godwin lauded ABC News' top spot in the ratings among broadcast news and other accomplishments achieved during her tenure. So that's just a quick update as we talk about the media so often on this program. I'm going to show you a little bit about the media's bias and the way that they are covering these college campus anti-Israel protests. Of course, depending on what outlet you watch, it's pro-Palestinian. It's never anti-Israel. We're going to talk a little bit about that bias. We also have a few things here, as I said, about New York, about Trump, about Biden, and you can still weigh in on the questions we asked last week. Do you think Noem's out? She's still giving some interviews. What did she say that's getting some pushback now, too, that she met with Kim Jong-un, and they're saying that did not happen? You've got the dog story. These are all kind of unforced errors. I mean, she did them herself by putting them in the book. So does that disqualify her, in your opinion? We are going to talk about colleges when we come back, so stay with us. We're just getting started on this Monday morning edition of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back.
Isn't your wellness important? Don't you want more energy? Now's the best time to make every day better and relieve those achy muscles and pains than with the Hesselsen's Hot Tub. Hesselsen's has hot tubs in stock and available for immediate delivery with unbelievable savings. Hesselsen's offers 0% interest-free financing for up to 5 full years. Hesselsen's carries the only hot tub brand in the industry with the exclusive freshwater salt system that is eco-friendly and easy to use and only enhances your hot tubbing experience. Come in today and see why your next hot tub should be a Hesselsen's hot tub. And remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselsen's.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer.
How do I know if I have a case?
Call 844-292-6222 and consult with one of our attorneys to find out if the products you used are part of the lawsuit. Your eligibility will also depend on how often you use these hair products and your specific cancer diagnosis. If you regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. Call 844-292-6222.
How much will it cost to talk to an attorney?
There is no fee unless we win your case. Call 844-292-6222 for your free case review.
Stop and save at GCP Discount Liquors and Wines. 1.5-liter Cavit Pinot Grigio, regularly $15.99, is on sale for $12.99. Save $2 a bottle with mail-in rebate, or $36 on a case of 6. 1.75-liter Canadian Club Whiskey on sale for $18.99. Save $5 a bottle with rebate, or $48 on a case of 6. GCP Discount Liquors and Wines in Horseheads, the best in service, selection, and price.
Beautiful view of Market Street as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Yes, we were talking about the Derby where Mystic Dan came in first. Not everybody's favorite, but Fierceness was the favorite, coming in at 15th place. Comment from a viewer. Good morning, Frank. Good morning. As for my Derby pick, ouch. It's a good thing I don't rely on gambling as a retirement plan for me. It's not, quote, in the cards. But I will say I now have a better understanding of how the Democrats must feel about their pick. Dead last. Thank you very much. Sorry to hear that. Not too many people that I know had Mystic Dan in their exactas or trifectas or however you decided to bet it. Israel is instructing, just to get into the news, Palestinians to evacuate parts of Rafah as ground offensive is looming. Civilians were directed by the IDF this morning to flee from the eastern part of Rafah to nearby Muwazi, which has field hospitals, tents, and increased amounts of food, water, medication, and other supplies as more aid flows into the humanitarian area. Israel has maintained that thousands of Hamas fighters are in Rafah, and it can't eradicate the terror group without moving in on the city. The IDF will continue pursuing Hamas everywhere in Gaza until all the hostages that they're holding in captivity are back home, the Israeli army said in a social media post. Despite international pressure not to invade Rafah, including from the U.S., Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has remained steadfast that the IDF would launch an attack. Rafah, which is Gaza's southernmost city that borders Egypt, has been a safe haven for more than 1 million Palestinian refugees, as most of the fighting has been focused on northern parts of the Gaza Strip. So that's just an update. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said on Friday, absent such a plan, we can't support a major military operation going into Rafah because the damage it would do is beyond what's acceptable. So that leads into the college protests, which we have been talking about now for weeks. According to CNN, here's what happened over the weekend. Oops, there we go. University of Southern California police cleared a pro-Palestinian protest encampment at USC without making any arrests on Sunday. It was the second time the school dismantled an encampment at the Los Angeles school. School president Carol Folt said in a statement that the protesters had chosen to break the law and that encampments won't be tolerated on campus. At Princeton, they have launched a hunger strike. We're going to get a little bit more into that later on, and will refrain from all food and drink except water until the demands are met, according to a student protest group. At least 17 undergraduate students were taking part as of Sunday. DePaul University, Chicago police were called to campus to help manage a large demonstration on Sunday. They show a large crowd of police, protesters, and counter-protesters, but no obvious signs of violence or vandalism as of early evening at the school. At the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA Chancellor Gene Block said, quote, urgent changes were needed with the school's safety operations after violence during recent protests on campus. The university also said it would resume regular operations on Monday and plans to hold some in-person instruction through the rest of the week. At the Art Institute of Chicago, police said they have arrested 68 people, including students from an affiliated school, during a demonstration at the museum. An institute spokesman said protesters have shoved a security officer and stole their keys to the museum, blocked emergency exits and barricaded gates, and refused an offer to move to a new location. Why give them the option of a different location? Anyway, the University of Virginia, police cleared out pro-Palestinian protesters. Again, this is from CNN, so they won't just say it's anti-Israel. It's always pro-Palestinian. And took down tents near the center of Charlottesville campus on Saturday. A line of officers in riot gear approached the group of protesters, grabbing away umbrellas before pushing forward to a line of tents and canopies. At the University of Michigan, pro-Palestinian protesters were removed from the university's main commencement ceremony after briefly interrupting it. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit because we made the prediction last week that this was going to affect graduation ceremonies. Now, some have been canceled or kind of changed, the graduation ceremonies. Some have been put on hold. What we have here is protests in the middle, because you got to remember, that's the perfect opportunity. You've heard my theory on this, and I think it's been proven that this is really more about the social media aspect to this, showing that you care the most about a hot button issue, which is anti-Semitism. You're anti-Semitic or you're anti-Israel, okay? So what a better place to get the most attention, because you've got parents, you've got the grandparents, you've got the students. So you know there's going to be protests during the ceremony because these people need to look like they're the ones that care, quote unquote, the most. At the University of Vermont, the school announced Friday that Linda Thomas Greenfield, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, would no longer deliver a commencement address. Some of the protests on the campus had called on the university to rescind its invitation to the ambassador. So you're seeing, as we predicted, a lot of caving to these list of demands that these students are making. And it's not just on college campuses. This obviously has sparked anti-Semitism throughout the country. In New York City, bomb threats were emailed to nearly 24 Jewish sites. The email sent on Saturday said, "Hello, if you see this email, just have notice of a bomb I've set inside of your building. This isn't a threat. I have a bomb in your building. You have a few hours to disarm or else blood will shatter everywhere." Sources said the threat came from a group calling itself Terrorizers 111. The targets included 14 Manhattan synagogues and Jewish centers, 5 in Queens and another 2 in Brooklyn, with 2 more upstate temples and 1 on Long Island. A similar threat was emailed to the New York Landmarks Conservancy. The threat comes amid heightened anti-Semitism in the 5 boroughs and beyond, as pro-Palestinian protesters have taken to the street. Now, this is even coming from New York Post. I don't like the new language that it's all pro-Palestinian. It's more. On Sunday, Chuck Schumer announced that $400 million in federal assistance would be earmarked to protect houses of worship by funding security guards, cameras, and barriers. Last night's bomb threats targeting New York City synagogues created immense fear, but sadly, these threats are not a total shock given the rise in anti-Semitism that we have seen and the overall spike in threats to places of worship. Schumer said, "Protecting our nonprofit community spaces like our synagogues, mosques, churches, and more has unfortunately demanded more help at the federal level as the threats have increased. These funds are to help lessen the unease across the city and places where we worship, pray, and learn." Now, according to the Anti-Defamation League, and this is why I think this is important, because a lot of times the media is just focused on the college campuses, but this is trickling out like we predicted. There were 8,873 anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. last year. That's a 140% increase from the 2022 figures. In all, there are 5,204 anti-Semitic incidents recorded by the ADL after October 7th. The 2023 incident included 1,009 bomb threats against Jewish institutions, they added. Now, as I mentioned, on the college campuses, and yes, we have a lot to talk about with this, so I don't want, well, I'm running a little late here, but you're having the disruption of Maine graduation. Again, this is not surprising. This is the opportunity for you to get the most attention and affect the most students, which seems to be the goals of these anti-Israel protests, these anti-Semitic protests. Anti-Israel protesters interrupted the main commencement ceremony at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. That was on Saturday. Look at all these waves coming in. Thank you. In a video posted to X, protesters carrying the Palestinian flag were seen walking down an aisle towards the front of the stage of the commencement ceremony. Protesters could be heard chanting, disclose, divest, we will not stop, we will not rest, disclose, divest. And others cussing, of course, which seems to be a mainstay. Now a plane with a message flying overhead said, "We stand with Israel, Jewish lives matter," was also seen flying above the graduation ceremony in a kind of an act of counter-protest, if you will. Anti-Israel protesters interrupted a commencement ceremony for the University of Michigan School of Music, Theater, and Dance on Friday evening as well. Free Palestine were some of the chants. funds genocide. The crowd gathered for the commencement ceremony responded by telling the protesters to get out of the auditorium, and several people could be heard chanting USA. This is interesting because the media has had to kind of recognize what this is doing to the president's reelection. Because, let's face it, with what we see in the media, they're supportive of these anti-Israel protests. But they see that it does not resonate with the American people. That they see these elitist, narcissistic students who are going to schools that are, about $80,000 a year, calling Joe Genocide Joe, calling Biden Genocide Joe. It's just not. And then to see the attack on the police, the attack on Israel, the attack on America, it is not boding well with voters who equate this with the Democrat Party, and rightfully so, as we've talked about so often with that article. But the new left thinks Hamas is good and the swastikas are woke. And that, again, is not sitting well with the voter, and some have had to take a step back, admit it, and see what they can do about it, because Joe Biden is in a bad place where you have people who don't like the protests turning on him and people who don't like Israel turning on him. It is quite a mess, and we're going to talk about that even more when we come back. But first, we got to take our second break, so stay with us. We're just getting started on this Monday morning edition of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back.
Was your premature baby fed a cow's milk baby formula such as Similac or Enfamil? If so, your child may be entitled to significant financial compensation. Evidence shows that cow's milk formulas increase the risk of NEC in premature babies, causing severe harm and even death. If your child was born premature and suffers from NEC, intestinal perforations, sepsis, cerebral palsy, or died as a result, you may have the right to sue for significant financial compensation. Call now for a free case review.
Vehicles are in-house and on display, with more on the way. If you're in the market for a new vehicle, visit Elm Chevrolet. Search Elm Chevrolet's entire new vehicle inventory at elmchevrolet.com. Together, let's drive.
Tending you love is a lot easier when you share the heavy lifting. Team up with Polaris Ranger, your hard-working partner for backyards, the backwoods, farms, and ranches.
Ithaca Recreation Sports, Route 13 in Newfield. Get outside and ride.
Bathroom of your dreams is only a phone call away with BCI Bath and Shower. We can make your ordinary bath and shower extraordinary. This is not a cookie-cutter design. This is a complete custom build that will fit your every need. It's never been easier or more affordable than right now to get the bathroom of your dreams. We have the best monthly programs in the industry with payments as low as $99 per month or no payments, no interest for 18 months with approved credit. The hardest part of your new bathroom is gutting and building the tub and shower. If your bathing area is old, there could be damage behind the walls and possible mold and mildew, which can be a serious safety issue. At BCI, we don't cover a problem, we fix it. Call now to get a never clean glass treated door with a no-track system at half off for the first 50 callers. Factory trained, certified installers made in the USA and discounts for seniors and military. Call 800-704-1798. That's 800-704-1798.
Getting aerial video for a commercial used to be extremely expensive, but not anymore. WYDC TV Big Fox now offers the Twin Tiers amazing aerial video for your business. We do it with our state-of-the-art drone and commercially licensed aerial pilot. Beautiful HD aerial video and pictures custom-made for your commercial. Call or email now to advertise on Big Fox TV and let everyone see your business in a whole new way.
Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for all the waves this morning. Please feel free to weigh in. I know we asked it last week as well, but who would you like to see as vice president? The president has claimed in the past, the former president, Donald Trump, that he has made his pick already, but it looks like a lot of the front runners were out over the weekend kind of stumping, if you will, for Trump. And Marco Rubio's name, which is still kind of a surprise to me, he seemed to be the most vocal, or at least get the most attention. Were you surprised by Marco Rubio's name being on that list? I don't know why I was so shocked. But anyway, we go back to college campuses just to show you kind of the spoiled nature of these protesters and their lists of demands. Columbia law students want the school itself, to cancel finals and pass all students because they were irrevocably shaken after protests break up. Yep, after the protests were broken up. That's what caused these students to can't even get up out of bed in the morning. The letter, penned right after the NYPD dismantled protesters' tent city on Tuesday and evicted them from nearby Hamilton Hall. It also said the school should at least let students receive a simple pass-fail grade because they're just so darn upset. The violence we witnessed last night was irrevocably shaken, many of us, on the review. We know this to be the same for majority of our classmates, the editor continued in a letter published by Above the Law. Videos have circulated of police clad in riot gear, mocking and brutalizing our students. The events of last night left us and many of our peers unable to focus and highly emotional during this tumultuous time. The letter added that the confrontation followed growing distress students have felt for months as the humanitarian crisis abroad continues to unfold and as the blatant anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and racism on campus have escalated. We believe that canceling exams would be a proportionate response to the level of distress our peers have been feeling. In the alternative, making course mandatory pass-fail would be the next most equitable solution. Yeah, so we don't want to have to take tests. We just want to pass. Already we're seeing that these degrees mean nothing in the long run. So many people affected by this. When you think they didn't want to protest, but now, if you are a big business or a corporation, whatever the case may be, would you even think about hiring someone from the graduating class of 2024 that went to Columbia? Well, the demonstrations at the Manhattan Ivy are part of the dozens of demonstrations at colleges across the country in which students have sought to take over buildings, build encampments, and disrupt classes in protest of Israel's war in Gaza. In the letter, the editors wrote that the school administration has refused to consider our calls for making all classes this semester mandatory pass or fail. Despite the fact that 3/4 of its students support it. Of course they would support it. We recognize our position as a student-run academic journal that simply cannot function if our students are not well. Many are unwell at this time and cannot study or concentrate while their peers are being hauled to jail. Again, there was supposed to be no consequences for this. The most what's the word I want to say? Powerful protests are the ones that you know that you have no repercussions and you'll get in no trouble. On Sunday, a law school spokesperson would only say that exams resumed Thursday after a one-day suspension and will be administered through the conclusion of the exam period. Now, according to CNN this morning, I believe it was CNN. No, Fox, excuse me. According to Fox, Columbia College Dean Joseph Serrett and General Studies Dean Lisa Rosen-Mech announced through an email on Sunday that Columbia College and School of General Studies, the students will be able to elect to pass, fail for up to 2 classes for spring of 2024. So giving in, not totally, but giving in to these list of demands, there should be no repercussions. And as a matter of fact, because you got the police involved, universities, we deserve to not have to take exams. We deserve to be pass, fail, because we have been, have grown up where there are no consequences for your action. As a matter of fact, you're only supposed to get support when you break the law, because you're showing that you care the most, that your anti-Israel statements, through them, that you care the most somehow. Yes, this is a great point from a viewer. What about all the other students that were disrupted and disrespected, and the madness before it escalates into full-blown chaos? I agree. That you think about the students that didn't want to protest, that were not involved in this whatsoever, who felt unsafe, were feeling the peer pressure to join in, and then at the end of the day, when they graduate, they're going to have what is now a stigma on them from having a Columbia degree, not knowing. You get that resume, and you don't know, and you don't want to do that extra work to find out if this person was an anti-Israel protester or not. So you throw it in the outbox. Anti-Israel protesters prepared to stay put for the summer, and this is another aspect of this that we've talked about. What would happen after graduation day? Well, I think some of it will trickle into the quote-unquote real world, meaning that these students will get back and protest in parks and on bridges and like that. I don't know. They're claiming here, coming from Politico, that they are going to stay put for the summer. I don't know. They're already complaining that they're not allowed access to the cafeterias. So what will their summer look like? Will the money keep flowing in? And did you see, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on, the mainstream media just shocked that these protests were being funded by Soros and other big money donors to the Democrat Party. It's kind of ironic. But anyway, back to this. Yes, give them nothing, says one viewer. Like a child throwing a temper tantrum, you ignore and they cease. Otherwise, they own you. I think, and I agree, and that's what's so frustrating, watching these universities cave into these demands, allowing this to happen. Now, you've got to remember, though, these students are cash cows. That's what the administration looks at them. $80,000 per head. So if you boot them off campus, you suspend them, you may not be getting that money. And they have gotten so fat and happy at universities, to use that coin, to use that phrase, excuse me, where they have so much money, the administration making so much money that they don't want to give it up. But as many universities and colleges around the nation are preparing for summer break, anti-Israel protesters show no signs of giving up. Several protesters told Politico that they were not going to give up, even with its summer approaching. And as several anti-Israel encampments on university campuses have been cleared, adding there is nothing that will deter them from continuing to protest as the war between Israel and Hamas continues. And we talked about what this means for the Democratic National Convention and other events. Quote, there is a genocide going on in Gaza, and there's nothing that will deter us from doing everything we can do to end it. Isn't that a level of narcissism to an ego? To think that these protests on college campuses is going to end a war in the Middle East. And again, the genocide, just not the case, as you see with Israel making the announcement at Rafah. But I will continue. This movement is not a flash in the pan, but it's here to stay, and will stay until we achieve divestment, as happened with the South African anti-apartheid movement in the 80s and so many others. Now, again, it's begun with disrupting commencement ceremonies. That's happened at a few places already. One protester and doctoral candidate at Ember McCoy, said these protests were not going to slow down, as there's still mounting pressure locally, state, and nationally to put pressure on politicians to respond to Palestine. I don't have any expectation that things are going to slow down. Both locally, state, and nationally, there's a valid and continued pressure on politicians to respond to Palestine. And there's a lot that can happen between now and November that I hope folks are paying attention to. Now in November. That's a kind of a veiled threat by one of the protesters. Yeah, and I think the Democrat Party is very concerned by this, because these protesters, most likely these young people, will not support Joe Biden, but also you have the backlash of that being the symbol of the Democrat Party. These protests is kind of elitist, spoiled students, and their anti-Semitic message is being viewed as the face of the Democrat Party. So there's a backlash on that too, like the former Congressman Joe Semplinsky said. There's a lot of people, especially in rural areas or swing states, that are going to say, I don't want to be supportive of this kind of, like the person said, a child throwing a temper tantrum. And the sad thing is the Democrats are really in support, and the media specifically, of these protests. Their only criticism is that police actually got involved, that there actually is repercussions for your decision. As I mentioned, Princeton University students launch a hunger strike. These always seem to go bad. Maybe these kids will last, I don't know. But doesn't it always seem like when some Democratic group gets together and says a hunger strike, it ends up lasting like 48 hours or less? Some students at Princeton have launched a hunger strike, quote, in solidarity with Gaza. Princeton Israeli Apartheid Divest, wow, that's a catchy name, said that participants in the strike would refrain from all food and drink except water until their demands are met. Protesters are demanding the university disclose all its investments, divest from companies that profit from or engage in Israel's ongoing military campaign, occupation, and apartheid policies, and commit to a full academic and cultural boycott of Israel. This all goes back to this is what they're being taught on college campuses. They're not coming up with this organically. This is their professors, the indoctrination that's happening. We have a couple examples of that and what some others have had to say. I did take a short break. We're running late already this morning, Monday morning, and we're just getting started. Thank you for all the waves. Keep those comments coming in. We're not going to just talk about the college protests, but there's quite a bit that we still have to cover. So make sure you stay with us. This is, Frankly Speaking, here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back.
Attention. This is an important message for firefighters, members of the military, and airport workers. For decades, first responders and firefighters at military bases and airports used a chemical-based foam to fight fires. Studies have shown that chemicals used to make aqueous film-forming foam, or AFFF, are highly toxic to humans and have been associated with several types of cancer. If you or someone you know was diagnosed with any of those cancers, call now for a free case review.
Entire practice is focused and centered around St. James Hospital in Hornell. We see a lot of joint pain from hips, shoulders, and knees, whether you're a weekend warrior or even a 80 to 90-year-old who just wants to stay active and keep walking a couple blocks in their neighborhood. I want to spend the time to connect, to really hear you and understand why you've come to visit me to seek treatment. It drives me to be the best physician I can be so that you can go back and do the things that you want to do in life.
Attention care beneficiaries. This is an important message for people on Medicare. Today we are talking about Medicare Advantage plans. If you're new to Medicare, moving or losing coverage, and don't have a Medicare Advantage Part C plan, call now because there may be a Medicare Part C plan with additional benefits available in your zip code. You can call now to find out if you're eligible to enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan with additional benefits. Just call 800-351-6177 and a licensed insurance agent can look up your eligibility and plan options and see if you're eligible to enroll in a Medicare Part C plan that could save money or include additional benefits. Don't wait. You are not automatically enrolled in a Part C plan with additional benefits. If you're new to Medicare, moving or losing coverage, call for your free, no-obligation Medicare benefits review. You won't know what plan options are available to you unless you call, so call now. The call is free. Call 800-351-6177. 800-351-6177.
Every Saturday, your game is on Fox. Because here is where it happens. Saturday on Fox, Judge swaggered up and went supersonic. True story. Saturday on Fox, Mookie put on a show in New York. You saw that, right? Saturday on Fox, Acuna racked these up on his way to the record. And it was Saturday on Fox when Harper went all Harper. So yeah, Saturday on Fox.
And we are back. What's that on the camera? A bug? We are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. A couple of quick announcements before we continue with our discussion on college campuses. I'm not sure if I've mentioned this yet, but don't forget, it's the Glass City Chorus prevents Celebrate the 60s coming up on May 11th at 7 p.m. at the Corning High School Theater. You have Mad Hatton. You also have Goldilocks and the Three Berries, okay? And Accordingly Noted. Admission's just $10. Students are free, so don't miss that event at the Corning High School Theater. Okay, speaking of 60s music, 50s and 60s, don't forget to stop by here at the station. I will have it in the window all week. Our painting of Dwayne Eddy, in tribute of Dwayne Eddy, and that was created by David Higgins. So I hope that you'll stop by. I'll have it turned the other way so you can see it from the road. Okay, and yes, it does startle me every morning because I'm not used to it yet. So at the college campuses, a statue of George Washington was defaced with Palestinian iconography. How would you say that? Iconography? I should have thought that through before reading on the air, huh? A large Palestinian flag remains hoisted above a protest encampment at George Washington University. A statue of George Washington remains defaced, and more Palestinian flags have been added, as well as additional Free Palestine stickers. The university's president, Ellen Granberg, has called the encampment increasingly unsafe and a violation of school rules, but, you guessed it, has yet to stop and break it up. And she has not even called for it to be dismantled. Meghan McCain, who I don't think is necessarily a political scholar, but I know she weighs in on politics a lot. Meghan McCain said it's pictures like that, the George Washington statue, that is just going to secure more votes for Trump. Would you agree with that? Because I do think there is such a disconnect with what's happening in the Democrat Party and what is what you consider mainstream. Trump used to call them the forgotten men and women. So if you turn on your news after working a hard day in the factory or wherever, and you turn on the news and you see these spoiled kids screeching anti-Semitic chants, it does not relate well to a lot of people. It does not sit well with a lot of people. Now, according to the Wall Street Journal, many of the pro-Palestinian activists in campus encampments around the nation trained for months with veteran activists and groups before launching their invasions last month. Others have noted many of the encampments have used similar tactics, and we've all kind of joked about how they all have the same tents, right? Big tent. And the activists are well trained in methods such as linking arms to push people, including journalists, out of their enclosures. Veteran activists have been on site, such as Lisa Fithian, who was recently seen at Columbia. And the New York Police Department has stated that funding for the encampments has come from all around the world. We're going to talk about that funding in just a little bit. I know we've talked about it on this program, this idea that Soros is funding it. There's many in the media that were shocked to hear that. We're going to talk about it in just a little bit. But training for months on this. According to the Wall Street Journal, the recent wave of pro-Palestinian protests, you can no longer call them pro-Palestinian protests. They are nothing but anti-Israel protests. But on college campuses came on suddenly and shocked people across the nation. But the political tactics underlining some of the demonstrations were the results of months of training, planning, and encouragement by longtime activists in left-wing groups. Though there isn't a centralized command overseeing the student movement opposing Israel's invasion of Gaza, there are connections between long-standing far-left groups and the protesters. For the last decade, donations to NJSP have been received and administered by the Westpac Foundation, according to Howard Horwitz, Westpac's board's the chairman. The donations are passed on to NSJP for projects in the United States, he said, declining to provide further detail. Columbia, oh wow, man, I'm running late this morning. We have so much to catch up on, but radical anti-Israel nonprofit it's called the People's Forum, is urging the Columbia protesters to ramp it up and to recreate the Black Lives Matter summer of 2020 riots, according to the New York Post. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back. I am running really late, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back.
Isn't your wellness important? Don't you want more energy? Now's the best time to make every day better and relieve those achy muscles and pains than with a Hesselsen's hot tub. Hesselsen's has hot tubs in stock and available for immediate delivery with unbelievable savings. Hesselsen's offers 0% interest-free financing for up to 5 full years. Hesselsen's carries the only hot tub brand in the industry with the exclusive freshwater salt system that is eco-friendly and easy to use and only enhances your hot tubbing experience. Come in today and see why your next hot tub should be a Hesselsen's hot tub. And remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselsen's.
Attention, if you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and now have uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call now to see if you qualify. There's no fee unless we win your case.
Football League, Sunday starting at 1 Eastern on Fox.
And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. So, continuing, the anti-Israel protesters who stormed Columbia's Hamilton Hall was urged by a radical activist group to rekindle the bloody Black Lives Matter riots of the summer of 2020. Fiercely pumping the bellows is New York City nonprofit The People's Forum, an anti-Israel organization with known ties to the Chinese Communist Party and backed by American businessman Neville Roy Sigmund, a self-described socialist known for financially supporting left-wing causes through Goldman Sachs' charity arm. At a Monday night meeting in Manhattan hosted by The People's Forum, hours before the infamous building takeover, around 100 mask-wearing activists were worked into a lather by the organization's executive director, who called for a, quote, final blow to destroy Israel. Nothing is surprising here. When you see the money involved, it's something that we've talked about numerous times on this program. But we do have a little bit more on this. And I don't want to, we're not going to talk about this all morning long, but there are enough updates and ways to look at this that I think it is important to continue to discuss it. I do think it exposes this anti-Semitism within the Democrat Party. George Washington University president has ramped up. Listen to this is how biased the media is. Listen, George Washington University president ramps up rhetoric against pro-Palestinian encampment. George Washington University president Ellen Gramberg said the pro-Palestinian protest encampment that has occupied part of the campus for more than a week has, quote, grown into what can only be classified as an illegal and potentially dangerous occupation of GW property. What? Come on. That's ramping up rhetoric. When protesters overrun barriers established to protect the community, vandalize a university statue and flag, surround and intimidate GW students with anti-Semitic images and hateful rhetoric, chase people out of a public yard based on their perceived beliefs, and ignore, degrade, and push GW police officers and university maintenance staff, the protest ceases to be peaceful or productive. All of these things have happened at George Washington in the last 5 days. She said the encampment is in violation of multiple university policies and is occupying the space reserved for law students' final exams. The university also believes the protests involve people not affiliated with the school. They always want to say that. So that's ramping up the rhetoric, pointing out exactly what these protests are all about. And again, there should be consequences. There should be repercussions. But these students are demanding none of it. Demanding that they don't have to take their exams and that they should, just because they had the heartbreaking image of their violent anti-Semitic fellow students being arrested because of that violence and destruction. And that's just too much. They can't get up in the morning, let alone take an exam. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this. I do want to mention about the funding on this, because I think it's pretty laughable when the media finally comes around and realizes that it is being funded and by who it is being funded by. So we'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. We're just getting started, almost an hour down. with the 2-hour edition of Frankly Speaking. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Isn't your wellness important? Don't you want more energy? Now's the best time to make every day better and relieve those achy muscles and pains than with the Hesselsen's Hot Tub. Hesselsen's has hot tubs in stock and available for immediate delivery with unbelievable savings. Hesselsen's offers 0% interest-free financing for up to 5 full years. Hesselsen's carries the only hot tub brand in the industry with the exclusive freshwater salt system that is eco-friendly and easy to use and only enhances your hot tubbing experience. Come in today and see why your next hot tub should be a Hesselsen's hot tub. And remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselsen's.
Attention, if you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and now have uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call now to see if you qualify. There's no fee unless we win your case.
Football League, Sunday starting at 1 Eastern on Fox.
We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. Thank you so much for joining us. A couple comments from viewers. No exam, no grade, repeat the term, or better yet, they could withdraw or be expelled. Yeah. They actually have some type of punishment. Another comment from a viewer. Isn't it odd that these squeaky clean students are in essence doing what President Trump did during the January 6th insurrection, and yet they are considered martyrs, and he is a criminal? Thank you for the comments. Keep them coming in. Coming from Fox News, anti-Israel protesters on college campuses are reportedly getting funding from several big-name Democrat donors that have backed President Biden's re-election efforts. Democrat donors such as George Soros, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, David Rockefeller Jr., who sits on the board of the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, and Susan and Nick Pritzker, who own the Hyatt Hotel Corporation, have funded pro-Palestinian efforts to protest the Israel-Hamas war, according to Politico. I still don't care for the term pro-Palestinian, but we'll continue. Jewish Voices for Peace and If Not Now are the main organizations behind the anti-Israel protests at Columbia University, as well as other campuses. They are backed by the Tides Foundation, which receives a substantial amount of funding from Soros, as well as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and distributes money to left-wing causes. The Rockefeller Fund donated $300,000 to the Tides Foundation in 2022. The Tides Foundation has given $500,000 to Jewish Voice for Peace, a far-left anti-Zionist organization that blamed the October 7th attacks on Israel and the U.S. rather than Hamas. The Gates Foundation has disputed the Political report. A spokesperson said the Gates Foundation had no active grant to the Tides Foundation and has never given grants to Jewish Voice for Peace and If Not Now organizations. They also said the Gates Foundation has not donated to President Biden. The Political report, titled Pro-Palestinian Protesters Are Backed by a Surprising Source, Biden's Biggest Donors. It was panned over the weekend because why would that be surprising whatsoever? That's why the media is so scared that the Democrats are being lumped in, and rightfully so, with these protests. This is actually the least surprising thing I've heard all year, said the creator of Libs on TikTok. Glad you guys could make it, said Washington Free Beacon reporter Joe Gabriel Simonson. Republican Alabama Senator Katie Britt commented at a completely unsurprising source. And a surprise to who, said Jim Banks. The journalists at Politico, apparently the only people on the planet that are surprised by this. This is only surprising if you're brand new to following Democrat money in politics, said GOP Communication Director Matt Whitlock. Yeah, hardly surprising at all. In addition to the anti-Israel protests happening across college campuses, protesters have repeatedly interrupted President Biden and other prominent Democrat leaders' speeches and events. They call Biden Genocide Joe and continue to protest the U.S.'s involvement in Israel's war with Hamas. So really no surprise whatsoever, and Politico being mocked because it is so obvious. It's the least surprising thing that Soros would be involved, right? So there we go. There's something we already knew, but wanted to pass along to you. So they're only a couple months late on that reporting from Politico. We have a lot of other issues we're going to get to after we kind of wrap up our discussion here on the college campuses. There's, and I'll pose this question again if you have any thoughts. Who do you think Trump is likely to pick for VP? There's a lot of question, a lot of speculation going on because he met with some of those potential VP candidates. He has kind of a short list over the weekend. I will say, I guess the only name that I kind of threw me for a loop was Marco Rubio. I didn't realize he would be in the hunt, but he seems to be. Also, Tim Scott's in there, some others. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. We've got a couple things about Joe Biden as well. If you want, does Kristi Noem seem to you, she's doubling down on some of these statements, and I think it's just making things so much worse for her. I don't think she's on that short list any longer, maybe for VP, but boy, she has not handled this that great. I think she kind of maybe got a little full of herself, thought these were good stories, and they have backfired majorly. So Kristi Noem out over the weekend talking about that. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Stay with us. 1 hour down. We have 1 hour left together here on Frankly Speaking. It's hard to believe how quickly this show goes, especially on a Monday morning. If you're just getting up and around, getting ready to go into school or into work, thank you so much for joining us. When we come back, we are going to talk a little bit more about the college campuses. There's an interesting piece, and I know I've been mentioning it a lot, where I don't think it just sticks to college campuses. That's been proven. But I have also said that I believe you'll start to see it at high schools. You'll see it in the quote-unquote real world as well. And some of that has been proven true already as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Also, since I mentioned Marco Rubio, what Marco Rubio had to say about the protests over the weekend. There's an interesting piece, if we have a chance, I want to get to it, by Miranda Devine. And she says, frat boy summer is this year's backlash against an epidemic of arrogant, entitled women. That's coming from Miranda Devine at the New York Post. I'll tell you a little bit more about that perhaps in a little bit. Jamal Bowman in the news. Boy, we've got so much to cover. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. Feel free to weigh in. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. Weigh in at any time or just send us a wave. But what do you think about the news over the weekend? If you're just joining us, it looks like Israel is going to go into Rafah, warning Palestinians to essentially move because there's going to be a ground invasion. Obviously, college campus protests were big over the week and the weekend, and a lot here about President Trump. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Looks like y'all got a lot of stuff here in your water.
You're never gonna believe it, but this can filter up to 60 different contaminants from your water.
It's all about cleaner drinking water.
Dude, that's good water.
And that's good water.
Now that's good water.
That's good water, eh?
No matter where you live, there's a Culligan water expert nearby. At Culligan, we think about your water so you don't have to.
Call today to schedule your free water test.
Was your baby fed a cow's milk baby formula such as Similac or Enfamil? If so, your child may be entitled to significant financial compensation. Evidence shows that cow's milk formulas increase the risk of NEC in premature babies, causing severe harm and even death. If your child was born premature and suffers from NEC, intestinal perforations, sepsis, cerebral palsy, or died as a result, you may have the right to sue for significant financial compensation. Call now for a free case review.
I'm Marianne Burt. I've lived here for 70 years, but I do fine right here in my house, and I want to be here as long as I can be. And I feel comfortable knowing that if something happened to me, someone would know because of the cameras that are installed in various spots in my home. That has been a wonderful gift to me, to be able to have that security and that support from Full Circle America, and that's what
And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, hour number 2 as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Don't forget, if you're in the Marcus Street area today, love to have you stop by and see our painting of Dwayne Eddy. There it is. You can get your picture with it or just take a picture of it. It's very beautiful, done by David Higgins. So we have that in the studio. Obviously, I will turn it around when the program's over so you can see it from the road. Okay, we were talking about the college protests. Senator Marco Rubio, who again is apparently on the short list for VP. I don't know. Yeah, that's just kind of a surprising one to me. He called for policy that has common sense. If you're an American on a student visa and you're supporting Hamas, then it's time for you to go. The Post included a clip of Rubio speaking on the Senate floor following the October 7th massacre, which saw the Hamas terrorist group perpetrate the deadliest attack against Jewish people since the Nazi Holocaust. And I think that's a point that many have made, and a very good point, that if you were on a visa, you should be booted out. I know that, was that it? Cornell, where 2 of the students that were arrested, I think there's only 4, at least the initial day, 2 were on a visa. Tim Scott, another person whose name is on the short list for vice president. I like Tim Scott. He said to college presidents, federal funding is a privilege, not a right. Very good point. We certainly respect the right, and I don't blame Tim Scott on this, but the disclaimer is getting a little old where it's we support peaceful protests. Yes, we all do. That's not what these are, though. But that's not to knock Tim Scott. It's everybody's doing it. We certainly respect the right to peaceful protest. What we are seeing on college campuses is too often not peaceful protest. There's a reason why there's been more than 2,000 arrests and detainment on college campuses. It's because people are being hit. They are vandalizing. They are breaking into buildings. What we have to understand is the anti-Semitism we see today is akin to the 1960s. The American people are saying it loud and clear. They support eliminating anti-Semitism from college campuses. They're being very clear. There's no place for hate in America. And that's such a good point, because how often have we been lectured by the left about hate has no room here. We don't. But now this hate is not only supported, it's encouraged. But I'll continue with what Tim Scott had to say. What's not clear is why it took so long for President Biden to come to the microphone and condemn anti-Semitism. Great point. He didn't know how to handle this. He doesn't want to lose more voters to this. The reason, in part, is because his base refuses to let him do so. He is pandering to politics as opposed to standing up for fairness and standing up against anti-Semitism. I would say this to every college president and university in America. Your federal funding is a privilege. It is not a right. A right is for every Jewish student, every Jewish kid on campus to walk to class safely. What is a right is for every Jewish kid to study in a library peacefully. We need to make sure that every student feels that kind of security on every campus in America. I could not agree more. Now, Carol Markowitz has a really good piece we're going to get to here in just a second. Let me do a little bit of housekeeping because I jumped right in the second hour. We do not have a guest for the Steuben Senior Services Fund interview this morning, but we're going to have some throughout the week, so make sure that you tune in. It's going to be a very busy week here on Frankly Speaking. Plenty to talk about, plenty of guests. If you have any suggestions for guests, please feel free to contact me at any time at that number on the bottom of your screen. So we are going to move away from college campuses here in just a little bit, but first, Carol Markowitz made the argument that we've made on this program numerous times, that this brainwashing starts well before college. Americans shocked at the aggressive protests on our most elite campuses often imagine these kids have become brainwashed while away at school. That indoctrination certainly does take place, yet the process for most starts far earlier, often in the K through 12 years or even before. What we're seeing on our campuses is a culmination of many years of leftist activists pushing kids to the forefront to spread their propaganda. And it's not remotely just broad books like A is for the Activist that introduces toddlers to the idea of protest before they even set foot in school. Teachers push their agenda, whether climate change, gun control, or the war in Gaza. They're focused far less on teaching children how to think than what to think. The goal is to turn kids into activists, and the sooner the better. After all, children can be valuable for shutting down debate. Their youth implies innocence and seems to confer moral authority. How could anyone argue with an innocent child, is the idea, says Carol Markowitz. Greta Thunberg famously quit school to campaign against climate change. It was impossible to challenge a pigtailed child, even if she demanded the world stop functioning. Recall her tearful "How dare you" in front of the UN Climate Action Summit back in 2019. Wow, is that already 2019? It reverberated widely because of her age. A grown-up making that plea would seem as kind of unbalanced, right? Yet the idea that Greta, as a climate warrior spokesperson, was born when a grown-up activist saw how teen anti-gun crusaders, after the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, viciously attacked ideological foes with minimal pushback. No one could argue with a traumatized teen, and that was the point. The concept has only spread since. This again, Carol Markowitz. Last week, the Stanford University encampment hosted preteens who led chants of "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," and sang Palestinian songs looking mildly bored. Grown-up radicals know how to get interested. Last month, the Free Press reported that the Long Beach Unified School District was paying students to train in racial and social justice causes. If kids have little passion for the cause, maybe some cash will win them over. They're even being used as fronts for major lawsuits across the country. The group Our Children's Trust is pursuing so-called climate litigation on behalf of 21 children. The idea is that climate change harms these kids' lives and future. But the real motive is to present a child as the aggrieved party to make it far more difficult for an argument to be had. Kids don't come up with an idea to sue various state governments for environmental issues. Okay, my 8-year-old asked if he could sue his best friend for being a Philadelphia Eagles fan instead of supporting his favorite Dallas Cowboys. That's more in line with an 8-year-old's thinking, but maybe not much less crazy than the ludicrous argument made by Julie Olson from OCT that government violate the constitutional rights of children through laws and actions that promote fossil fuels, ignore climate change, and disproportionately imperil young people. Last week, combining several of the left's pet causes into one, a drag queen led small children in a Free Palestine chant during Drag Queen Story Hour at Valley Families for Palestine group in Amherst, Massachusetts. Leftist indoctrination is warping kids' development. Children want to please grown-ups and don't know any better way, so they will repeat what they're taught. But when asked to explain their knowledge of the issues, they're often quite shallow. And we've saw numerous examples of that. What are you protesting? Oh, I don't really know. I wish I was better educated on it, that idea. A lot of it is peer pressure. We talked about this on Friday. Well, really all last week. Peer pressure, why these kids are getting involved. They want to be with the quote-unquote cool kids. As the one student said, and Carol Markowitz brings it up, I wish I was more educated. Yes, we all wish that. If we're horrified by the bad ideas and worse methods on display on our college campuses, we need to fight back long before a high school senior gets his or her acceptance letter. Parents must draw the line and say, my child is not your activist. But for some reason, there's almost this this narrative that protesting is the greatest thing that you can do. So they latched on to what was a shocking, and rightfully so, a shocking issue, which is anti-Israel, anti-Semitism. They've latched onto that, and yeah, it has opened the eyes to a lot of people to see what the Democrat Party has become. It has shocked a lot. And anecdotally, I've talked to quite a few people that are shocked about it. But it has been there for a long time. It's now just at the forefront, and they're not hiding behind closed doors any longer. This is the quote-unquote cool thing to do. That's why you'll see so many graduations be disrupted by these protesters, because that's when you'll get the most attention. And it's all, at the end of the day, about likes and views on TikTok, and to show that you care the most. You care by showing hate, by being anti-Semitic. So the days of being lectured about love trumps hate and all those kind of corny cliche statements, bumper sticker slogans, those days of being lectured are over. There is hate being spewed at these protests, at these anti-Israel protests. Even, and Nicole Jelinas says, even the peaceful campus protests are actually violent bullying. Yeah, you've got to keep in mind, too, the Jewish students that feel unsafe on their own college campuses. They're paying the $80,000 a year, too. And now they have their graduations moved. Many instances, remote learning. But how nonviolent are the nonviolent protests, she asks? The cliche from left-wing politicians and academia is that the last 2 months' worth of campus mob action have been a marvel of non-aggression. Yes, if you see how they are covering it, the pro-Palestinian protests are peaceful. The only negative thing that happened is they actually got police involved. Yeah, actually the mobs are not non-violent only because everyone else is non-violent, surrendering to the agitators' use of physical bodily force to get their way. The non-violence line is common on New York's left. After Columbia University first called the police on its campus lawbreakers in mid-April, City Comptroller Brad Lander said such action against nonviolent protests violated the university's protection of speech. AOC added that calling in police enforcement on nonviolent demonstrations is dangerous. Nonviolent has also become the go-to neutral term. The one thing the Columbia protesters have not been in these days is violent, Columbia professor Mark Moswer said. These accounts ignore the reality. Protesters use physical bodily force to bully others and to subvert the rule of law. Even when the mobs are looking peaceful, they are not really peaceful. As Michael Powell observed in The Atlantic of the Liberated Zone on the Columbia lawn, self-appointed masked leaders form a human chain to keep, quote, Zionists from entering the camp. These liberated zone occupiers have no legal or moral right to prohibit other people, including people with different viewpoints or different physical emblems, like an Israeli flag, from using the lawn. It is a space open, theoretically, to anyone affiliated with Columbia. The only thing keeping out the Zionists was the credible threat of mob violence and the human chain wall of bodies. Push against the human chain, the mob implied, to assert your legal or moral right to access the lawn, and the chain will push back. Otherwise, why make a human chain? You can see it for yourself in videos. My class is over there, the self-identified Jewish student told the mob, but they refused to budge from the common right of way. Only apartheid is pro-Hamas banning Jews from access to essential services. In doing so, they use physical force and only physical force to assert their will. Might makes right. The C only looked nonviolent because the students didn't meet their physical force with physical force of their own. If he had pushed them out of the way to cross the path that should have been open to him, the story inevitably would have been Jewish student violently assaults peaceful protesters. What a great point on that. And we talked about that last week, where there was more instant criticism by universities when pro-Israel students finally had enough and got confrontational. And what was the focus on? The pro-Jewish students, pro-Israel students being the problem. Let's see. After a Columbia agitator used a hammer, not exactly a symbol of nonviolence, to break into Hamilton Hall last week, another masked, gloved intruder got into what was called a shoving match with a maintenance staffer. The worker then left. It's good that this incident didn't escalate into serious injury, but that's not because the protesters chose nonviolence. It's because the maintenance worker kept his cool, wisely surrendering to not just the threat of violence, but to the reality of violence. The only reason Vanderbilt students could occupy a campus building in March was because after the students shoved past the guard physically yielded to their superior strength. None of this is nonviolent protest. Nonviolent protesters wouldn't use physical force to deter other people from common space. And nonviolent protesters would turn away at a guard's insistence that they leave, not physically overpower him. Nor does surrendering to riot gear police make a mob nonviolent. All it means is the mob rationally realizes the police are stronger. Students and other campus protesters are free to engage in nonviolent protests. They can write letters and articles, engage in campus and public debate, and organize campus demonstrations. But that's not what they're doing. This isn't free speech via peaceful protest, but threatening and menacing the rest of us, which often works because we are nonviolent. I thought that was a really good piece from the New York Post. Stay with us. We got waves coming in. I didn't even notice. Thank you so much. Stay with us. We got to take our first break of the second hour of Frankly Speaking. We'll be right back after this on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Stay with us.
Attention. This is an important message for firefighters, members of the military, and airport workers. For decades, first responders and firefighters at military bases and airports used a chemical-based foam to fight fires. Studies have shown that chemicals used to make aqueous film-forming foam, or AFFF, are highly toxic to humans and have been associated with several types of cancer. If you or someone you know was diagnosed with any of those cancers, call now for a free case review.
When I walk into the library, it's like new worlds open up. There's so much to see, so much to do.
I am interested in a lot of things, so this is a perfect place for me to come and go, okay, this one, this one, this one.
If someone in the community needs resources, they just have to ask.
This is a treasure chest. I feel like everybody can benefit from the library. You, and especially you.
Strong libraries equal strong communities. Vote on May 21st.
Race car drivers change lanes very fast, but with no outside mirrors. How come they don't crash? Introducing Angel View, the new wide-angle mirror that reduces blind spots. Angel View simply snaps over your car's rear view mirror, giving you a 160-degree view behind you. Just look at the difference. Look, ordinary rear view mirrors are small and flat, but Angel View has a huge mirror with curved glass. This convex shape allows you to see both blind spots with one glance. And with our Pro Edition special coating, it's anti-glare at night. Get your Angel View now for just $19.99. But wait, Angel View may be discontinued. Due to rising costs, Angel View is stopping manufacturing effective immediately. Once the current inventory is gone, it's gone forever. Order now.
Call 1-800-897-0371 or visit getangelview.com. Order now.
It's a new season of Sherry.
Having a good time has always been my *1 goal. I tend to get crazy. At my age, I should not be jumping up and down like that. And if you don't know what I mean, ask your mama. The young ones, y'all like, we don't know what you're talking about. But I promise you, in 30 years, you will.
It's the best time in daytime.
Weekdays at 2 p.m. on Big Fox.
Our beautiful view of Market Street as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you so much for joining us on this Monday morning. A couple comments from viewers. Biden didn't come out with condemnation for protests and riots because his handlers were negotiating behind the scenes with the DNC to shape the message and not alienate the far-left America-hating politicians. They must keep their party as unified as possible. Soon the players will shift from the Palestinian issue to abortion protests so we can have another, quote, summer of love leading up to the election. Good point, Ken. Thank you. And another comment from a viewer. Do you think Trump will surprise us all and reveal his VP pick, who will be none of those we have considered? That's a great question, because I wasn't completely convinced that he wouldn't still pick Noam. You never know what you're going to get with Trump. So it could be somebody way out, not politically in left field, but way out in left field that we never thought would be on the list. It seems kind of unlikely, but you never know with Trump. You really don't. We are going to wrap up our discussion on college campuses. The New York Post editorial board did highlight that American academia is deeply, deeply infected with anti-Semitism and anti-Americanism. We've talked about that a lot on this program. It's been very anti-Israel, very anti-American, very anti-police. As Charlie Gasparino says, the way elite colleges have taken vast overseas donation is in exchange for shaping their faculties and curriculum in opposition to Israel and America. Heck noticed that, and whose first name? Anyway, notice that the Pritzers serve on the boards of both Columbia and Harvard, even as the Pritzker Family Foundation funds multiple groups supporting the, quote, pro-Palestinian protests. Mayor Adams is certainly right to stress the role of outside agitators in fanning the campus flames, but plenty of agitators are deep on the inside, too. Don't relax as a few more heads roll in coming days. Detoxifying these institutions will take years. Yeah, it's almost, I think, a lost cause. I mentioned this quickly, and this is the last little bit we're going to talk about. Miranda Devine says this summer is going to be considered frat boy summer. And it's a backlash against an epidemic of arrogant, entitled women. This is coming from Miranda Devine, not me. Behold the frat boys unapologetically waving Old Glory and saving Old Glory, singing the national anthem, chanting USA, and rudely ridiculing the campus freaks who parade around in Hamas colors and barricade themselves in university buildings. Heaven forbid they actually look like Trump voters. This display of masculinity erupted in Gen Z is an affront to the grand societal feminization project of the left, which only has itself to blame. Frat Boy Summer is this year's backlash against an epidemic of arrogant, entitled women who have been coddled all their lives and think they're smarter and more important than they really are. Again, this is coming from Miranda Devine from the New York Post. I just want to get your take on it. It is a manifestation of the growing political divide between men and women that has been evident in opinion polls for some time now. There's a 10-point gap on most issues between men and women. Young, unmarried women, in particular, skew very left, while young men are becoming markedly more conservative. You can find this full piece for yourself. But she continues, when accountability occasionally finds them, they are flabbergasted beyond belief, meaning the women that are protesting, while the rest of the world is quietly revels in their comeuppance. Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, is the avatar of the entitled female. The White House press secretary is simply horrible at her job. She's not on top of her material and never provides a coherent answer to reporters' questions. But instead of showing a little humility and upping her game, she does interviews boasting about how awesome she is at the hardest job in the White House. I'm a historical figure, and I walk in history every day, she said. And then she lists some other people. These are people not anyone should admire. They believe they are entitled to privileges and protections they did not earn and did not deserve. The losers in the equation have been young men. They are the new forgotten people, derided for who they are, since they have nothing to lose and nobody has earned their respect. The frat boys will be as rude and obnoxious as they like. It's very maleness is offensive. Then why bother trying to be polite at all? Instead, they lean into their power in a rather Trumpian way. Nature always finds a way to assert itself, and it isn't always pretty, she says. So that's Miranda Devine. I just thought that was kind of interesting. Jamal Bowman, who's running for re-election in a tight race, he hosted a fundraiser. Now, he's been remember, he says the anti-Semitism has been overblown. Isn't that interesting? It's okay to hate as long as it's approved hate. And I guess now approved hate is anti-Israel, anti-Jewish hate. But Jamil Bowman hosted a fundraiser with an extremist Muslim leader who praised the October 7th attacks on Israel. This is coming from the New York Post. The event took place this week at a private residence in Virginia, which promised Bowman and Nihad Awad, the executive director of the Council on American Islamic Relations. During his time in Congress, Bowman has become one of the top Israel haters in Washington, accusing the Jewish state of crimes in Gaza. The American Israel Public Affairs Committee has said it plans to spend millions in an effort to unseat him, with the first ads expected to roll out this week. The flyer for the Bowman event reads, as a direct result of this call for a Gaza ceasefire, AIPAC has vowed to spend $100 million against progressive members of Congress, and Jamal is their top target. Now they're saying that race is going to be close. Yes, that's a good point. Got a comment from Ken. Sounds like KGP, the press secretary, is doing exactly as she is told to do. Yeah, there's something very awkward about the binder. Just reading out of the binder, and when someone asks a question, having to flip through your notes. Nothing really off the cuff. But anyway, just wanted to mention that with Jamal Bowman. All right, we got to take another short break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Isn't your wellness important? Don't you want more energy? Now's the best time to make every day better and relieve those achy muscles and pains than with the Hesselson's Hot Tub. Hesselson's has hot tubs in stock and available for immediate delivery with unbelievable savings. Hesselson's offers 0% interest-free financing for up to 5 full years. Hesselson's carries the only hot tub brand in the industry with the exclusive freshwater salt system that is eco-friendly and easy to use and only enhances your hot tubbing experience. Come in today and see why your next hot tub should be a Hesselson's hot tub. And remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
You need a fan, but they're bulky, awkward, and never put the breeze exactly where you want it. Introducing my fold-away fan from Bell & Howell, the compact cordless fan that unfolds into your own personal wind machine and extends to nearly 4 feet high. Its lightweight portable design makes it easier than ever to have a targeted breeze anywhere. Plus, this whisper quiet fan has 3 separate speeds, making personalizing your comfort a breeze. My fold-away fan's rechargeable lithium battery lasts up to 10 hours, and it has enough power to blast a breeze to the other side of this room. Its unique telescoping stand allows you to place it on the floor, so the breeze will reach anywhere with ease. Then the whole thing folds away for easy storage. Get my fold-away fan from Bell & Howell for just 2 payments of $19.99. It comes with the USB cable to make charging fast and easy. My fold-away fan. Call or click now.
Call 1-800-349-4156. That's 1-800-349-4156 or go to myfoldawayfan.com.
Name something with a diamond in it.
Diamondback rattlesnake.
It's in the name. Name a low-calorie food you might make your edible underwear out of.
Salmon.
Watch it weeknights. Share it the next day.
Wild caught Norwegian teriyaki.
Share in the fun. Weeknights on Family Feud.
7 and 7:30 on Big Fox.
And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Also, we do not have a Steuben Senior Services Fund interview this morning because we had so much catch up on from over the weekend. Did you see now that re-election, and we were talking about Bowman and so many others are up for re-election, that now House Democrats are seeking kind of to reverse course and make it look as if they are strong about the southern border? Because let's face it, the polls have shown time and time again, immigration is either number 1 or number 2. It'll be immigration and the economy. And they had some over the weekend in the media that were shocked to learn that people have nostalgia, even some Democrats, nostalgia for the economy during the Trump administration. And we talked about in the past, there is that nostalgia of peace and prosperity now at a time when obviously the world is on fire. The economy is not good. It is nice to look back when we had peace and prosperity. But I'll continue. 5 vulnerable Democrats who voted against measures to strengthen border security in the past have seemingly changed their tune as they seek re-election in November. Following President Biden's signing of a $95 billion package with aid to both Ukraine and Israel last week, 5 Democrats, Jared Golden of Maine, Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez of Washington, Mary Peltola of Alaska, Vincent Gonzalez of Texas, and Don Davis of North Carolina released a joint statement agreeing with calls for Congress and the president to, quote, act and bring order to the southern border. Beyond defending our allies, we strongly agree with the National Border Patrol Council that Congress and the president must act and bring order to the southern border. That is why we also voted for H.R. 3602 on Saturday, and why we all voted last month for the $19.6 billion for Border Patrol that would ramp up efforts to secure the border. The comments from the 5 Democrats, 3 of whom are engaged in tough re-election battles that have been labeled toss-up races by the Cook Political Report, and another 2 competing in races labeled Lean Democrat, came after each of them voted against the Secure the Border Act of 2023. You're going to see a lot of people backtracking on this as it gets near to November, because it's very much like we talked about at the state level, where Governor Hochul doesn't really do anything, but she realizes the perception on public safety is a major issue for voters. So she tries to spin it as if they're doing something. It's the same here. You're going to see a lot of Democrats all of a sudden be the toughest they can possibly be on the border. Now, Rich Lowry has a piece. How am I doing on time? Because I know I ran late last hour. Okay. Rich Lowry says President Biden has suffered a collapse in his standing generally, but fundamentally, It's because so few people think he's doing a good job, and he's in such a perilous state. And this is what I was mentioning, just to kind of backtrack or to piggyback off of the nostalgia that they talk about in the polling. But other than that, he's doing great, said Rich Lowry. It's hard to exaggerate how abysmal Biden's polling has been lately. No incumbent president should ever want to be near 43% in a head-to-head ballot test. Yet here he is, Joe Biden, at 43% in the latest CNN poll, 43% in the latest Morning Consult poll, and 43% in the latest Economist YouGov poll, etc., etc. Now, Biden ticked up to 48% when Harvard-Harris pushed respondents to choose between Trump and Biden, and the Economist YouGov poll had RFK Jr. in the mix. But do you detect a trend? There are other polls that have Biden a little higher. It's no mystery why Biden's polling is at crisis levels. An incumbent president's level of support in a re-election bid is typically tethered closely to his job approval. It's hard to get much more than a couple of points above it. Biden's job approval rating is at 40%. The CNN poll has Biden's job approval right there at 40%, where it's held steady for about a year, with 60% disapproving of the job the president is doing. The Harvard-Harris has his approval rating a little higher at 44%, even though he's at 43% in the ballot test. It's not just that Biden's job approval is low, he's trailing Trump on the rather crucial metrics of who was or is a successful president. According to CNN, they reported on this last week and they didn't want to. It was not numbers they were happy with. 55% of the public now considers the Trump presidency a success, and 44% look at it as a failure. Biden, in contrast, is upside down. Only 39% say his presidency has been successful, while 61% say it's been a failure. People may have all sorts of expectations for presidents. That they not get indicted, that they not post on Truth Social in all caps, that they accept the results of elections, etc., etc. But the most important one, surely, is that they succeed at their job. Being considered a failed president is not, needless to say, a status consistent with winning re-election. Of course, the economy is the biggest anchor on Biden. So that's coming from Rich Lowry. The most direct way for Joe Biden to improve his chances in November would be to become a good president. Although it's unfair to place such unrealistic expectations on him at this juncture in his presidency and his career. And yes, the media has been forced to report on this. This is 2024's new political normal, 6 months from the election. Trump on trial. Now, this is what I've been mentioning all morning long, and I think it's important to note. Democrats register growing alarm over protest fallout. Democrats face another week dealing with the political consequences of campus protests over Israel's war in Gaza. A wave of protests at campuses over the civilian carnage. Listen to how biased CNN is when they write this. Has emerged as a severe test for Biden's appeal among progressive and young voters whom he needs to help him beat Trump in November. After days of building political pressure, the president addressed the situation for the first time on camera last Thursday, saying that the right to protest was a vital American freedom, but that it was not acceptable when demonstrations turned violent. He condemned anti-Semitic incidents that have been reported against some Jewish students, and he said he wasn't rethinking his stance on Israel. Trump and Republicans have seized on the protests. Remember, we brought this up last week. It's Republicans' fault for quote-unquote seizing on these protests to show the chaos. It just reeks of bias, doesn't it? And police operations to clear them at some schools to underscore their narrative that the country is spinning out of control under Biden and that Trump could restore law and order. So that's all it is. It's just Trump highlighting this. Nothing's really happening at these protests. But speaking on State of the Union, the Biden campaign's national co-chair Mitch Landrieu pushed back on the analogy by Bernie Sanders, who likened the current protest to the anti-Vietnam War sentiment in the 60s that caused then-President Lyndon Johnson to abandon his re-election bid. Landrieu said the independent senator from Vermont's views was an over-exaggeration. This is a very different circumstance. I think the people who actually lived through that very different time, they would say this isn't comparable. However, that is not to say that this is not a very serious manner. Some Democrats have downplayed the impact of the protests, citing polls that suggest the war in Gaza is well down the list of concerns for most young voters. But Democrat Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, a staunch supporter of Israel during the conflict, warned that pro-Palestinian demonstrators could help Trump in November. Quote, like if they want to throw Michigan to Trump that way, well, if you want to play with that fire, you better own that fire. Anyway. So they're starting to recognize it. Now we've got, when we come back, we're going to talk about Trump's VP hopefuls as they were out over the weekend giving a lot of speeches. We do have a couple of New York State issues we'll get to here in just a moment, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Wow, you found it.
I did.
The History of Water Part 6? I've been dying to read this.
I know, honey.
I always wanted that book.
At Culligan, we get that most people don't think about water like we do, and that's okay. You see, when we install one of our high-efficiency water softeners, we're thinking about hard water and limescale buildup, so you can just think about longer-lasting appliances and softer skin and hair. At Culligan, we think about your water, so you don't have to.
Call today to schedule your free water test.
What I'm about to show you is going to change the way you shave your head forever.
You can shave your head in 90 seconds or less with no cuts or nicks.
Introducing Remington's new and improved Balder Boss. With increased flex and 5 dual-track floating head design, get over 60% more head coverage for a faster, closer shave and skin-close results. And only through this exclusive TV offer, now you can try it in your home for 30 days for just $14.99. Balder Boss is the fast, easy, safe way to shave your head, wet or dry, in 90 seconds or less, without nicks or cuts.
No nicks, no scrapes, fit in the palm of my hand, and the results were amazing.
The 360-degree pivoting neck contours closely around your head curves for maximum contact, anytime, anywhere, in 90 seconds or less. With exclusive Wet Tech technology, shave in the shower, or with any foam or gel. Japanese-grade steel blades and turbo power plow through the thickest of hair, yet gentle enough it won't irritate skin. With pure lithium power that lasts up to an incredible 60 minutes. That's like 1 full month of use without a recharge. Then easily rinses clean. There's even a pop-up trimmer to complete your perfect groom. Now you can try the Remington Balder Boss in your home for 30 days for just $14.99. But wait, order now and we'll ship it to you absolutely free. You can also get our ear, nose, and brow trimmer for the ultimate groom. Free. Just pay separate processing and handling. Every Balder Boss comes with a 5-year limited warranty where durability is guaranteed, plus a 100% satisfaction guarantee. If you don't absolutely love it, send it back, but keep the trimmer as our gift just for trying.
I got a clean, nice, smooth shave in under 90 seconds. No nicks, no cuts.
So order now.
We are back, frankly speaking, here on Big Fox. A comment from a viewer. Just wondering if anyone else recalls the debate time in 2016 where you were hard-pressed to find even one American flag behind the podiums during the Democratic debates. I remember distinctly, and that was a sign, in my opinion. Thank you very much. So the Trump VP hopefuls continued their audition, is the way that CNN said it. House GOP Conference Chair Elise Stefanik, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, and Florida Senator Marco Rubio all made high-profile TV appearances on Sunday as speculations swirl over who Trump will select. Now, Kristi Noem was out trying to do some damage control with that story. As CNN reported Friday, sources said Noem was off the short list long before the excerpts from her book dropped and won't be under consideration anytime soon. Elise Stefanik was on Sunday Morning Futures on Fox saying this is Joe Biden's Democrat Party, meaning the scenes of chaos on college campuses, the protests. And the reality is this is why Republicans continue to pull stronger and stronger, because we represent peace and security. We represent standing up for the Constitution. We represent supporting our ally of Israel, and we strongly condemn anti-Semitism. And Elise Stefanik has been really outspoken on that. She's really brought attention, before even these protests began, brought attention to the anti-Semitism on college campuses. Rubio was on Fox News Sunday calling Biden weak and feeble, and I mentioned that take the international students' visas away if they are pro-Hamas. Tim Scott claimed Biden took too long to condemn anti-Semitism and is pandering to his base. So everyone was out giving a little bit of auditioning to see who will be Trump's VP. Is there someone that you like in those names that I listed, or do you want to see someone out of, like the one viewer suggested, maybe out of left field, not even knowing the person's name at this point? I could see Trump making that decision, picking someone that we never really considered in the running. I was, again, I know I've said it all morning long, but the Rubio kind of shocked me. For some reason, I didn't think the two got along that great, but I guess I am mistaken because he is on the short list. Is there one of the ones that have been mentioned that you would like more than others? Just a fair question. Would anyone be surprised if he picked Roseanne as his VP? Yes, I would have to say I think many of us would be surprised. Christy Nome suggests that Biden's dog, Commander, remember Commander was a dog that was biting Secret Service agents. It was pretty, it was very unfair for the Secret Service agents. But anyway, she said that he should suffer the same fate as the dog she put down, Cricket. She was talking about her book, No Going Back. She said, what would I do if I was president on the first day of office in 2025? Thanks for asking. I happen to have a list. The first thing I would do is make sure Joe Biden's dog was nowhere on the ground. Commander, say hello to Cricket for me. But my dog, Foster, would sure be welcome. He comes with me to the Capitol all the time and loves everyone. I don't think you're helping yourself. In a Sunday appearance on CBS's Face the Nation, Noam said Joe Biden's dog has attacked 24 Secret Service people. So how many people is enough people to be attacked and dangerously hurt before you make a decision on a dog and what to do with it? That's the question that the president should be held accountable to, Noam said. So Face the Nation, of course, they would say it this way. You're saying he should be shot? That's the president should be accountable to. What is the number? I don't understand it, folks. I really don't. Another comment from a different viewer. I would like to see Roseanne debate VP. Where's this coming from with Roseanne? Anyway, Noam addressed feeling threatened by Nikki Haley. Talked about the controversial dog killing and a little bit about Trump's VP speculation in her book. The governor hunkered down on her support for Trump, who she described as a bull in a china shop in her book. Trump recently confirmed the Republican governor was on his short list for vice president, and when asked about the coveted position, Noam said she wants the former president to pick who's going to help him win. He knows what I'll do, whatever I can to help him win. But every day it's clear to me that our way of life is under attack, and unless he gets in the White House, this country is going to see some very challenging times ahead. The story went on as follows. You don't need to know all about the dog story, Cricket. I think you've heard that enough in the news over the week, but we did talk about it quite extensively last week. I'm not surprised that those who have attacked me are attacking me. Republicans and Democrats who attacked me during COVID are the same ones who are attacking me now. But I think the average citizen, when they read the story, will recognize that I put the safety of people in my hands above an animal that was killing livestock and attacking people. Then she talked about Nikki Haley. That's the thing with Nikki Haley. You never know who she's going to be tomorrow. She's going to be whatever the polls or donors tell her to be. And that should be very scary to the American people. The people who know her best, including some colleagues in her home state, seem to have the same concerns. I think Nikki says whatever is convenient for Nikki that day. I've watched this for years now. You never know who she's going to be tomorrow. She tends to be motivated by what works and what the polls say. And that's not the kind of politicians we need leading our country. All right, we got to take another short break. If we're really going off the cuff, what about Tim Allen? Sure. Okay, Tim Allen for VP. What about that guy? Who was Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs? Didn't he? Wasn't there speculation that he was going to be RFK's pick at one point? Anyway, and why not keep those predictions or thoughts coming in? I guess we're talking Hollywood celebrities now. We got to take a short break. Stay with us. Thank you for all the comments. You can keep them coming in at any point in the day, and we'll be right back after this.
I'm Marianne Crawford. I've lived here for 70 years, but I do fine right here in my house, and I want to be here as long as I can be. And I feel comfortable knowing that if something happened to me, someone would know because of the cameras that are installed in various spots in my home. That has been a wonderful gift to me to be able to have that security and that support from Full Circle America, and that's what it's all about.
Getting your video for a commercial used to be extremely expensive, but not anymore. WYDC TV Big Fox now offers the Twin Tiers amazing aerial video for your business. We do it with our state-of-the-art drone and commercially licensed aerial pilot. Beautiful HD aerial video and pictures custom-made for your commercial. Call or email now to advertise on Big Fox TV and let everyone see your business in a whole new way.
Shell Missy face off in
Why can't we watch DuckTales? Because we don't learn anything.
Book Smarts versus Street Smarts.
Is it working? Are you feeling motivated? Very.
It's the battle of twins.
Life is so confusing. I always hoped it would be easier for me when I grew up. It's gonna be all right. You were faking. Bazinga.
Young Sheldon.
Weeknights at 6:30 on Big Fox.
Man, time is flying. Can you believe it's already 7:45? So get your last minute comments in to Frankly Speaking here live from the Hesselson's studio. A reporter, and I mentioned this, kind of just hinted towards it earlier in the broadcast, but a reporter was stunned by voters having a nostalgia for the Trump years at a time when there was peace and prosperity. President Biden is facing an uphill battle to convince voters that the November election is a referendum on Donald Trump because even Democrat voters have nostalgia for the Trump years. Host Jonathan Karl on ABC's This Week asked his political panel on Sunday to comment on the lack of enthusiasm over Biden's re-election. NPR White House correspondent Asma Khalid confessed that the Biden campaign would have trouble selling its message on Trump because, quote, many voters are looking at this election as a referendum on Biden. Khalid said she had been surprised by Democrat voters telling her on the campaign trail that they have a nostalgia for the Trump years. What I've already heard in so many of these interviews with people is a lackluster sense of enthusiasm. Whether it's black voters, you would call them sort of disaffected Republicans. To make this a referendum on Trump, sure, is what the Biden campaign wants. But it is really challenging because many voters are looking at the election as a referendum on Biden. I was just up in Pennsylvania, nonstop. I heard about the economy, and people don't feel great about the economy now. This nostalgia for the Trump years is something. It's the economy nostalgia. I heard that Democrats even, which was really shocking to me, lay Democrats, remembering how good they thought that their 401k was. They would say in their next breath they're not going to vote for Trump for a variety of reasons, but that is what Joe Biden is up against. Yeah, well, we talked about it for a long time. That's why other Democrats were getting mad that he was campaigning on Bidenomics, because everybody said don't own this. You could mislead with as many numbers as you want, but this is something that affects your pocketbook. So they can lie to you as much as they want and say, no, everything's doing good. But when you go to the grocery store, and what used to cost you $50 is now $100, no matter how many stats they try to give us, it's not going to work. There is that nostalgia. Representative Jasmine Crockett from Texas, a Democrat, argued that people were trying to glamorize the Trump years and were forgetting how former President Trump affected abortion access through the Supreme Court picks. Right now, everybody wants the president to fix every single thing in their lives, but the president can't fix every single thing. It was lean in, and we talk about the fact that the president is one of that gets the Supreme Court pick. We know that these three justices that Donald Trump got to pick under his presidency, they're the ones that took away reproductive access. They are the ones that are attacking diversity, equity, and inclusion. Affirmative action. They're the ones saying, you know what, Biden wants to help you on your student loans, but we refuse to allow him to give you that help that he wants to give you. I don't know. Is that a winning message? Interesting. Now, Trump plans, if you have not heard this, plans to deport nearly 20 million illegal migrants from the U.S. Diane Glebova from the New York Post has a piece on how that effort would move forward. Donald Trump has vowed to deliver the largest mass deportation effort in American history if he gets back in office, targeting millions of illegal migrants across the country. The 45th president has frequently spoken about the deportation agenda and recently indicated in a Time magazine interview that he would leverage local law enforcement, the National Guard, and the military to carry out his plan. Similar to the dragnet-style sweeps of I can't say that, but when Eisenhower did that 1 million migrants out in 1954. The Trump 2024 campaign has not gotten into the details of what resources would be needed to find, detain, and deport the nearly 20 million illegal immigrants they say are currently in the U.S. But carrying out an operation that large would require a massive expansion of immigration and customs enforcement, collaboration with the State Department, and a boost in funding from Congress. So kind of interesting. If you want to find out all about that information, you can find that at the New York Post. We've got to take our last break here, and then we'll wrap things up on Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us.
Attention high school students, college transfer students, or anyone looking to further their education. This is the event for you at the Elmira Elks on May the 8th. There will be a free college fair with free parking. Come and talk to 2- and 4-year college representatives, in and out of state schools, public and private schools, technical schools, United States Armed Service recruiters, local police and fire departments recruiting new cadets. This only happens once a year, May the 8th at the Elmira Elks College Fair from 6 to 8 p.m.
Something with a diamond in it.
Diamondback rattlesnake.
It's in the name. Name a low-calorie food you might make your edible underwear out of.
Salmon.
Watch it weeknights. Share it the next day.
Wild caught Norwegian teriyaki.
Share in the fun. Weeknights on Family Feud.
7 and 7:30 on Big Fox.
On Fox, New York City, a grand stage where the best of the best compete for the crown. In a pound for pound,
Oh my goodness!
paw for paw,
Look at that!
all-out battle for glory.
Who will be crowned the top dog?
The Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show, sponsored by Purina Pro Plan, begins with a Masters Agility Championship, May 12th on Fox.
And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. Thank you so much for joining us. Here's a comment from a viewer. So Kristi Noem will say anything she needs to make herself look good. Why would she tell a damaging story about putting a dog down? Possibly she is a different type of politician, one that tells the truth, even if it is damaging to her career. I think because people have told her in the past not to keep highlighting that story because it wouldn't sit well with the American people. I think she believes that story displays her courage, displays her strength, and it just missed the mark. I do know that she really wants to be VP. She really has kind of delusions of grandeur, not to put her down, but wants to be VP, and I think she blew it with that book. And it was an unforced error. She brought it up herself. No one made her do that. Now, Dean Obeidallah at CNN, said, and now imagine this, we've seen what's going on college campuses. We've seen swastikas, we've seen anti-Semitic language. Opinion from Dean Obeidallah, the latest example of Trump's seeming obsession with Nazism. And just to show you how biased they are at CNN, this is how he ends his piece. All this leaves me asking myself once again, which is the presidential candidate who loves democracy and our Constitution, and which is seeking to pull us backward into dark and dangerous times? So I guess what they're trying to say is Biden is the candidate that loves our Constitution and loves democracy. Okay. The New York Post has an editorial that I think is really interesting. We're not going to have time to get to it, but Biden and Mayorkas still owe that border agent an apology for that lie about whipping. Remember that? One of the falsely maligned border agents has just earned an award for his outstanding work in combating human smuggling. And there's still no apology from Biden and Mayorkas. In September of 2021, the El Paso Times photographed a group of mounted border agents trying to control a crowd of 14,000 Haitians. Liberals became hysterical, and the false whipping narrative spread like wildfire on social media and got picked up by other outlets. Did Biden officials wait for the facts? Of course not. When the voters make Biden pay for his perverse priorities in November, we hope that offers some solace to the agents he maligned. In New York, I know I'm going to run I'm going to run quickly through the news here because we have so much that we need to get to. New Yorkers are still paying for closing Indian Point. We talked about this not that long ago. Among the many ways New York is still paying for the erratic but forceful leadership of ex-Governor Andrew Cuomo, the soaring expense and growing unreliability of the electric grid likely tops the list. Cuomo forced the shutdown of the Indian Point nuclear plant even as he rammed through the insane 2019 climate leadership law that demands an impossibly radical and expensive shift to wind and solar to produce most of the state's power. Fully embraced by Governor Hochul, the climate law insists the state get 70% of its energy from non-carbon fuel by 2030 and 100% by 2040. Also, New York legislature is going to weigh in on a lot of issues like social media, harm, climate change, all that, much more as the session nears the end. The state legislature plans to spend its remaining legislative days debating hundreds of proposals, including bills to protect kids from addiction to social media and to limit the cost of measures to combat climate change. So addictive social media is one, the climate change, custody battles, the SIT Act, Long Island glass recycling, et cetera, et cetera. Now, NewYorkUpstate.com says, can New York State Fair pay for itself? For now, it still needs a boost from you and I, the taxpayer. Yes, I know I'm out of time. The New York State recorded an operating budget surplus last year, a positive sign, after about a decade marked mostly by losses. But the surplus was less than it was the previous year, and there wouldn't have been a surplus in either year without a continued and substantial bailout from state taxpayers. If not for a $7 million state subsidy last year, the fair would have posted a $5.3 million operating loss. The state subsidy has been $7 million in each of the past 3 years and is scheduled to continue at that level in the coming year. In addition to canceling operating losses, the subsidy is large enough to provide a financial cushion in the form of a positive end-of-the-year balance. We are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Don't forget, if you're just joining us, don't forget to stop by the studio and see the great painting of Dwayne Eddy by our friend David Higgins. I'm going to turn it around, so if you are on Market Street and you want to give it a look, it'll be facing the street as soon as the program's over. Thank you for all the comments today. Really appreciate it. As always, you can reach out to me if there's something you think I forgot, some kind of comment that you wanted to make. Maybe you're watching a little bit delayed. The number there, 607-358-3131. I would love to hear from you. Also, as we near November and primaries, I would love to hear your suggestions for potential guests on the program. I try my hardest to get as many guests as you, or the guests that you ask for. So I'd appreciate if you send me some suggestions. We try to have a guest almost every single day. And now trying to make that, what's the word I'm looking for? Trying to really focus on that because we have the Steuben Senior Services Fund sponsor of our interview. So thank you to Steuben Senior Services Fund. Thank you to everybody who joined us. It was a fun morning. Went too quick. I'm almost thinking we need 3 hours. What do you think? It did. It went too quick, but I appreciate everybody weighing in on the issues of the day. And it's not too late. Who do you think former President Trump is going to pick as his VP candidate? I would love to hear from you. And have a fun and safe day, folks. And we will be back tomorrow morning, starting at 6 a.m. Yes, we are 2 hours now, starting at 6 a.m. with Frankly Speaking. Only on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Have a great day, everyone.
It's a new season of Sherry.
Having a good time has always been my #1 goal. I tend to get crazy. At my age, I should not be jumping up and down like that. And if you don't know what I mean, ask your mama. The young ones, y'all like, we don't know what you're talking about. But I promise you, in 30 years, you will.
It's the best time in daytime.
Weekdays at 2 p.m. on Big Fox.